epilepsy warning for flashing lights and colors. Lightning rod at Tennessee's Dollywood. Now you may be thinking, how can such an acclaimed thrill ride end up in my failed coaster series? Especially since it's still operating. Well, as it turns out, this ride, in its original form, was one of the most notable maintenance migraines in roller coaster history. But why exactly did the original version fail? Let's take a look at the history of Lightning Rod right here on Theme Park Crazy. It all started in 2013 with the opening of Outlaw Run at Missouri's Silver Dollar City. This wooden coaster, built by American manufacturer Rocky Mountain Construction, or RMC for short, would open to critical acclaim. The attraction revolutionized the concept of the wooden coaster, packing steep drops, intense elements, and not one, not two, but 3 thrilling inversions. This coaster was absolutely a success, and it put Silver Dollar City on the map for many coaster enthusiasts. Shortly after Outlaw Run's opening, Silver Dollar City's parent company Herschend Entertainment was looking to add a new roller coaster to another one of its parks. This park was the world-famous Dollywood in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. Rocky Mountain Construction was soon brought on board to construct the proposed project. After blowing away Herschend with Outlaw Run, expectations were extremely high. Officials were hell-bent on creating yet another revolutionary roller coaster experience, and the ride's development alone was packed with twists and turns. Soon after development started, Dollywood officials brought up the idea of a wooden coaster. But they didn't want just any wooden coaster. Instead, they proceeded to ask RMC if they could put a launch on a wooden coaster. RMC was intrigued by the idea and began looking at their options. One early idea floated around was a high-speed cable lift. A good comparison would be El Toro's cable lift at Six Flags Great Adventure, but with higher speed. Though this idea was promising, Herschend wanted to go even crazier. Instead of a cable system, the suggestion was made to use a full-on magnetic launch. RMC was intrigued by the idea, but that wasn't all Herschend suggested. At first, RMC wanted to use their steel iBox track for the ride, but Dollywood was interested in their wooden topper track. The main difference being that while the iBox track is all steel, the topper track has wooden boards stacked below the rails. Herschend insisted on using the topper track, that way they could market it as the world's first launched wooden coaster. In addition to taking on Herschend's suggestions, RMC officials wanted to do something else to help close the deal. In order to show the potential of an uphill launch, RMC founder Fred Grubb took Herschend officials out to Idaho's St. Anthony sand dunes. Here they partook in off-road sand rail driving. The idea was to replicate the G-force of an upwards launch, with the sand dunes representing the hill the trains would be sent up. Doing this, RMC could show Herschend officials just how thrilling it would be. Another thing worth noting is that apparently, Fred Grubb drove his vehicle so high off the sand dunes that he almost died in the process. Thankfully, not only did he survive, but RMC secured the job with Dollywood. Soon enough, the time came to build the coaster. Herschend was aiming to build it on a large hill, with a complex terrain behind it. At first, officials, including the ride's designer Alan Schilke, were nervous about the complicated terrain, but after getting a good look at it, they agreed it was an exciting location. The most interesting thing about the terrain was that it was largely hidden from park guests. This would give potential riders a sense of mystery as they wondered what lied beyond the lift. With the project in the pipeline, the coaster was officially announced on August 7th, 2015. Sure enough, the announcement was a grand event, with the park's co-owner Dolly Parton as the star of the show. The coaster's name was revealed to be Lightning Rod. Meanwhile, the ride would be themed to 1950s hot rod racing, with the train resembling an actual car of that sort. The announcement even included 50s and 60s musical numbers, such as Born to Be Wild and Mustang Sally. The announcement generated major buzz in the industry, and coaster enthusiasts were excited for the new attraction. At that point, RMC had consistently delivered grade A rides, and enthusiasts expected the same ejector airtime and insane elements. The coaster's layout went as followed. Passengers would emerge from the station and make a right turn towards the first hill. Then, an LSM launch would send the trains upwards at 45 miles per hour. This doesn't sound too fast on paper, but when you're going upwards, it feels a lot more exciting. After cresting the top, the train dips down before ascending another hill. Afterwards, riders drop down 165 feet, hitting a max speed of 73 miles per hour. This speed made it the fastest wooden roller coaster on Earth. After this enormous drop, guests were met with a massive wave turn to the left, giving some jubilant sideways airtime. Next up is a quick turn to the right, followed by a 90-degree banked left turn. A couple strong airtime moments later comes what's often considered to be the craziest element on the ride, the quadruple down. This terrain-based moment consists of 4 consecutive dips downwards, packing in some of the best pops of ejector airtime out there. This is followed by yet another airtime moment and the turnaround finale before the final brake run. All in all, while it didn't have inversions, the ride promised to deliver every bit of excitement that RMC's previous coasters gave. The coaster was scheduled to debut in March of 2016. Unfortunately though, this proposed opening did not happen. Behind the scenes, the park struggled with the ride's launch system. For Lightning Rod, the linear synchronous motor launch was a big problem. RMC had never built a launch system, and they did not have the resources to make one themselves. So for this project, park officials sought help from Pennsylvania company Velocity Magnetics. This company though had also never built a launch system. Although they did have plenty of experience with magnetic systems, these were actually braking systems and not launch systems. Still, they did have the resources to build a magnetic launch. Plus, Velocity had installed their braking systems on several of Dollywood's other attractions, so it was easy for the park to reach out to them for another project. After months of testing and modifications, it wasn't until June that Lightning Rod finally opened to the public. But not so fast, because just 5 days later, the ride would shut down again due to a reported part recall. Later that month, the ride did reopen, but it was placed in technical rehearsal. This meant that the ride was only open sporadically and periodically closed for maintenance. Basically, Dollywood was admitting that there was no way they could guarantee that everyone would ride it. The summer went by, and later on in September, Dollywood declared the ride was fully operational. But while it was more reliable than it was before, that wasn't saying much. For the rest of the 2016 season, Lightning Rod was constantly closed for maintenance, and it became notorious for its downtime. Getting this ride to run was like winning Minesweeper on expert mode. Extremely technical, time-consuming, and in many cases, completely up to chance. Oftentimes, guests would see the ride test running in the morning. This caused many to wait by the entrance for it to open, only for it to remain closed for the day. This was due to the fact that roller coasters usually have to complete a certain amount of test runs in a row to open. In some cases, the ride would complete the necessary test runs and excited guests would line up in droves. Then, when the train was finally sent out with passengers, the coaster failed to launch and rolled backwards. Indeed, the launch system was among the ride's biggest issues. Sometimes it would overheat, while other times it would encounter an error and fail to launch the trains up the hill. Since the launch was sending the trains upwards instead of straight forwards, it naturally needed a lot of power to overcome gravity, though it is unknown if this played a role in the system's issues. Things only got worse when the holiday season came around. As if the coaster's problems weren't already bad enough, Lightning Rod was unable to operate in temperatures less than 40 degrees Fahrenheit or about 4.5 degrees Celsius. For one thing, cold weather increases rolling friction, meaning the coaster was much more likely to valley. Moreover, various parts of the ride could contract in the cold, causing even more errors than in the warmer months. To be fair, most roller coasters face these same issues in cold weather, but one thing that made it worse for Lightning Rod was its placement on the hill. If there was snow, most of the track would be located in an area that didn't get much sunlight. This meant it would take even longer for the snow to melt off the track. Essentially, trying to ride Lightning Rod during the Christmas season was like trying to ride a unicycle on an ice hockey rink.
Now let's go out there and be the first ones in line! Yeah!
2016 was a major headache for Dollywood, and officials looked for solutions behind the scenes. One major issue that came up was the trains putting too much stress on the track. As it turned out, the track was susceptible to accelerated wear and tear in the most high-intensity segments. Supposedly, this was especially true for the top of the launch hill. The train crested this hill immediately after being launched. While this did give an excellent pop of airtime at the top, the train was still hitting the crest hard. Too hard. There were even some reports of the top speed being faster than intended, so the track was supposedly taking on more stress than it was supposed to. Excessive strain on the track not only caused increased downtime, but it reduced the service life of the track as well. When the service life on any component ends, the part either has to be fully replaced or removed entirely with the rest of the ride. Of course, having just installed this major attraction, Dollywood had no intention of removing this coaster. As such, the cost of maintaining the track and structure were said to be astronomical. In order to reduce stress on the structure, Dollywood adjusted the launch in 2017. Contrary to popular belief at the time, trim brakes were not added, nor was the speed reduced. Instead, the adjustment involved switching off the launch earlier than before. This allowed the train to crest the hill at a more manageable speed that put less strain on the structure. This change was helpful, but 2017 was still a troublesome year for Dollywood. Downtime remained a major concern, and more modifications were planned for 2018. That year, the trains were modified to be lighter. This was in addition to the trunk previously being removed years before. This time, they removed the heavily themed front Zero car and redesigned it to be smaller. This still wasn't enough though, and at one point, the Zero car was removed entirely. In spite of these changes, the coaster still had issues with downtime. In the meantime, another issue had manifested itself. At the bottom of the main drop, riders were met with an uncomfortable jolt. This was due to a pothole that formed in that area. Apparently, the trains hit the bottom of the drop so hard that this caused significant wear on the track. In 2018, the coaster was closed for yet another extended period of time. Eventually, the pothole was fixed up, but the coaster's stubbornness still persisted. It remained difficult to get a ride on this coaster. Officials refuted that the ride was closed more than it was open, but the amount of downtime was still said to be much greater than the average coaster. One could easily argue that the biggest flaw of the ride was not the launch, the train, or the potholes, but the fact that it was a wooden coaster. Magnetic launches need extremely high precision. This means that the launch fins on the track have to align precisely with the gaps in the magnets on the trains. Some leeway is allowed, but the problem is reportedly with the wooden structure underneath the launch. By nature, wooden structures are much more flexible than steel ones. For this reason, if the structure flexes underneath the track, this can cause the fins to be misaligned with the magnets. This, in turn, can cause an error that cancels out the launch and sends the trains rolling back. It could also damage the launch system in the process. These issues likely played a factor in the decision to swap out most of the wooden topper track with steel iBox track. This adjustment occurred between the 2020 and 2021 seasons. Over half of the layout was given this new track, which officially classified it as a steel hybrid coaster. This meant it was no longer the world's only launched wooden coaster. Though considering its unreliability beforehand, it's likely that park officials saw it as a necessary sacrifice. Not only that, but the new steel track would increase the ride's longevity as well. After all, the steel iBox track needs much less maintenance than the topper track. The iBox track was placed on segments of the ride where the most stress was generated, such as the first hill and other intense elements. As a result of this retracking, the ride has reportedly faced much less downtime, and in the past few months, it's said to have its highest uptime percentage ever. Unfortunately, getting to ride this coaster is still uncertain when you visit the park, and some say it continues to face downtime more often than the park's other attractions. So what's next for this ride? Will RMC replace the wooden structure with a steel one? Will they retrack more of the coaster? Or will Dollywood decide that the ride is too expensive and troublesome to keep operating? That latter option is unlikely, but all of this is unknown. Over the years, the influx of disappointed guests and technical issues have led some to wonder if it was worth it. One can argue that Dollywood and RMC were too ambitious, and Velocity Magnetics was too inexperienced with launch systems. Still though, to call the attraction a quote-unquote failure would be disrespectful to everyone involved. Getting a project off the ground is already difficult as it is, but you really have to give everyone credit for building a ride of such immense quality and innovation. And there's no shame in Velocity expanding their business with new products and taking chances. Sure, Dollywood and RMC could have went with something milder and easier, but considering how fun Lightning Rod is when it's operating, you really have to respect them for their enthusiasm to try something new. Though it is unfortunate when a project doesn't turn out the way you expect it, Engineering is all about taking chances and learning new things along the way. Right now, the future of Lightning Rod as a steel hybrid coaster is still being written. As for the original wooden version, the fact that it was built is a true amusement industry achievement. This coaster is by no means a total failure. It simply serves as a reminder that despite how complex and frustrating engineering can be, sometimes you just have to persevere and keep trying. And now it's time for the comment shoutout program. This is where I take 5 random comments from my previous video and read them out. These comments come from my video on roller coaster design fails. Face Into Keyboard says, I-305 is still capable of blacking people out. Source, me in 2021. It was kind of hilarious. I woke up several turns later thinking I was having a dream, and then being freaked out that I was dreaming about being on a roller coaster. I've been on it since then, and I blame dehydration. Renerick says, I've actually been on Texas Tornado. Whenever I visit my family in Amarillo, we usually go to Wonderland, and every time we go, some of us try to get as many rides as we can. It's a pretty fun coaster with some really funny history, so if you're near the area, you should definitely check it out. Brendan Corwin says, I don't see why they can't widen the radius of the last turn on Pegasus or add brakes before the turn to dampen the lateral Gs. That design just seems like pure neglect to me. Raymond Gradisher says, went on Twisted Colossus last weekend. Both laps were a race, though when we got in the station, they said the oncoming riders only had 30 seconds if they wanted a race. And It's Nikiti says, couldn't Twisted Colossus resolve the dueling station by simply having free lockers earlier in the queue? Surely that would speed up ride operations enough to make dueling much more common. If you want to see your words in my next video, leave a comment down below and it may be selected. Please note though that inflammatory or spam comments will not be read. Thank you all so much, and if you want to support me on Patreon, you can do so once again at the link in the description. Thanks for watching everyone. Feel free to like, share, and subscribe. You can follow me on social media on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, or you can check out my website at themeparkcrazy.com. And I'm on TikTok. This is Theme Park Crazy, and I'll see you all next time.